I think it's very useful if local environment concern groups be incorporated into the contingency planning process from the start, because they might have useful information which will help build up a sensitivity map, and their particular concerns should be taken account of in the contingency planning process.
Most large oil spills soon become a long, drawn-out affair. What starts as a speedy response action must eventually move up a gear into a long-term project, which will need careful and sustained management. Inevitably, such an undertaking will have significant financial implications. But who pays? Where does the money come from? And how does it get to those who need it most?
It's important that the country themselves give this activity a high priority. There are in existence United Nations development programs which can provide financial support for human resource development and for such things as national contingency planning. But the countries themselves have to, in their negotiations with the United Nations, place this on their list of projects for which they'd like to see funding made available.
Developing countries do have many other things to worry about than a once-in-a-lifetime event that everyone hopes will never happen. There's lots of places to get help and cooperation from. Their neighbors. Virtually every part of the globe is covered by a regional sea program, and they could use that as a touch point, if you will, to obtain the help they need or to start the dialogue.
Unfortunately, many countries perceive cost as a main problem, when in fact the first step in the whole process of assigning national focal points and beginning the planning process should not entail cost, and indeed should not be considered a barrier. IMO can provide technical advice and assistance directly to the countries to help them prepare the plan. IPICA, through the major oil company members, is well placed to assist at the national level, providing technical expertise and help.
Oil spills from tankers are uniquely served by an international compensation system. And the compensation system is based on two international conventions developed under the auspices of the International Maritime Organization and two voluntary agreements developed by industry. And these regimes are what are called strict liability regimes. Put simply, that means that the claimants do not have to prove that the tanker was at fault in order to qualify for compensation. Compensation essentially covers four items. It covers cleanup costs, damage to property, fishing boats, fishing nets, etc. And it covers economic losses suffered by people as a result of the oil spill. And finally, it covers restoration costs, measures that may be undertaken to speed up the natural recovery of damaged environments. Governments can avail themselves of the compensation available very easily. They have to ratify the international conventions. This doesn't cost them anything. The Civil Liability Convention, which is the first tier of compensation available, requires tanker owners to have insurance to meet the costs of any oil spill. So therefore, the cost falls on the tanker owner, not on the government. Very similarly, the second tier, the so-called Fund Convention, requires that a levy be imposed on the importers of oil into the country, so-called, if you like, cargo owners, so that they can meet the second tier of compensation. So again, no cost to government. So really, it's very easy for governments to get the benefits of the system at no cost.
There's absolutely no doubt that there's a lot of cooperation around the world between governments and industry on oil spill contingency planning, but unfortunately it isn't consistent, and you usually find that those governments and those countries that have suffered a major incident usually have their plan in place and their resources arranged. But unfortunately, that those countries and parts of the industry that never suffered a major incident still have a lot of work to do.
Having the plan is no good unless there are people who can put that plan in force, and unless the plan is in fact exercised. It's necessary to be able to take the ingredients of the plan and translate them into action, so that people will know precisely what they should do. If it's a plan that is put into a bookshelf, it's useless.
The oil industry has been in the forefront of the environmental debate for a long time. Our oil exploration and production platforms, our refineries.
It's very important that we are not complacent about what we do. Contingency plans, as such, do not solve the problem. The test will be if they are applied, and that's a critical test. we should exercise our plans, and this is another area where we should cooperate again with governments.
The argument is simple, that one oil spill, even though it may be a very rare event, can cause such damage to a country's natural resources, to their fisheries and food supply, that it will far outstrip any money and effort paid in to establish and maintain an effective response system that could have prevented a lot of the damage. The way forward must be to establish genuine cooperation between government and industry in those countries that have no contingency plans. Because if there are no plans, there will be no policies, no data, no organization, and therefore little hope of a speedy and effective response, whatever the size of spill, whatever the potential for environmental damage.